This is definitely a satisfying ending. Please feel free to use it. Let's begin our exciting tale. I woke up to find my Ice Queen wife, Lu Ruyuan, gone. In her place, a scowling little kid in a teddy bear onesie stood beside the bed. With red-rimmed eyes, the child pointed a trembling finger at the ring on my hand and demanded, "Who are you married to?" Staring at the strangely familiar face, I remained silent for a long moment, utterly bewildered. Maybe to you? Lu Ruyuan, whose very name strikes fear into the hearts of many, returned home with the faint scent of blood clinging to her. I shivered involuntarily at the sound of the door opening. Not out of fear, really, but Lu Ruyuan seemed to misinterpret my reaction. She glanced at me indifferently, smoothed her hair, then draped a cashmere coat over my body, clad only in a pair of boxer briefs. The briefs, which perfectly outlined my assets, didn't even seem to register on her radar. Lu Ruyuan spoke, her voice low and husky with fatigue, making my heart ache with a strange longing. "You're dressed too lightly. Be careful not to catch a cold." Wrapped up like a burrito, I wanted to say something, but my hand brushed against her skirt and I grasped at nothing. Soon, the sound of running water drifted from the bathroom. I sat on the sofa, lost in thought. In this enormous house, the two of us coexisted in silence. My marriage to Lu Ruyuan had always been this way. It was, after all, the product of a series of unfortunate coincidences. The fact that she agreed to marry me in the first place was already a huge favor. I'd heard that her true love was far away overseas. Her heart already belonged to someone else, so I shouldn't have expected anything more. When Lu Ruyuan emerged from the bathroom, her damp hair was slicked back, and her features, softened by the water, looked even more captivating. I didn't dare to look at her directly. My fingers fidgeted nervously. Tonight, I'd even dared to wear a pair of men's triangle briefs that I usually wouldn't, but still no reaction. Perhaps my attributes were simply too inferior compared to her beloved, making even this subtle attempt at seduction seem absurd and laughable. She simply didn't care. The more I thought about what I had done, the more ashamed and self-reproachful I felt. I berated myself internally. "Gojibwa, look at yourself. You're not even worthy." After this harsh self-assessment, I couldn't bear to stay in the bedroom a moment longer. Without even glancing at Lu Ruyuan, I tried to slink away, but a warm, jade-like hand stopped me. Lu Ruyuan herself was cold, but her hand was warm. "Why do you look so unhappy? There are a lot of people outside. You're dressed too lightly. Do you need anything? I'll get it for you." Her tone was so flat that I couldn't discern any emotion. Afraid of seeming troublesome, I quickly shook my head. "I'm not unhappy. I don't need anything." In my haste, the towel wrapped around my waist fell off. Lu Ruyuan bent down to pick it up, giving her a full view of, well, everything. She stared at my midsection, completely lost in thought. After a long moment, she finally cleared her throat and averted her gaze. Seeing this, I didn't ask any further questions. She simply said, "It's late. Get what you need and come back to bed." Since she said so, I abandoned my plan to sneak off to the guest room and crawled into bed. Just as I was settling in, Lu Ruyuan suddenly spoke. "Where's the ring you were wearing?" Beneath her calm words, a subtle tension simmered, like a brewing storm. Having lived with Lu Ruyuan, the Ice Queen, for so long, I was familiar with her temperament. She was clearly angry, so I retrieved the ring box from the nightstand and showed it to her. "It's too valuable. I was afraid of losing it," I explained. The furrow in her brow finally relaxed. As if pleased by my words, the corners of her lips curved slightly upwards. "You don't need to be so careful. Just wear it. If it's lost, it's lost. It doesn't matter." "Okay," I replied, my heart leaping with joy. I carefully put the ring back on, feigning an air of cherishing it deeply. In truth, I didn't want to wear it. I didn't want to be constantly reminded that I was married. But my wife didn't love me. I didn't sleep well that night. When I woke up from a restless dream, the space beside me was already cold. Lu Ruyuan, the Ice Queen, had disappeared again. I figured it wasn't my place to ask where she'd gone. I chuckled self-deprecatingly. Just then, I noticed something, or rather someone, standing stiffly by the bed. My heart skipped a beat. I jolted awake, but my cry of surprise died in my throat. I stared. The figure was dressed in a teddy bear onesie, with a slender waist and long legs, a striking figure. But the face was incredibly young, maybe 18 or 19 years old. The person had been staring at me with a frosty expression, but after I woke up, their emotions shifted dramatically. Their chest heaved, their eyes instantly reddened, and their expression became a mixture of hurt, disbelief, and anger. I followed their gaze to the pink diamond wedding ring on my finger. More importantly, this person looked exactly like my wife, who had vanished earlier that morning. "You're married?" the girl asked, her voice trembling slightly, still carrying the vestiges of puberty. It was clear she was furious. And I was utterly confused. Yes, I'd woken up to find my wife shrunk. Well, internally shrunk. The cold, imposing Lu Ruin was gone, replaced by a scowling teenager in a teddy bear onesie, who was now accusingly demanding to know who I'd married. Anyone would be bewildered in this situation. So, I looked at her, pursed my lips, and slowly began, That might be. As soon as I uttered those words, the air seemed to freeze. I tried to anticipate young Ryuin's reaction. Anger, outrage, maybe even a swift kick, just like her older counterpart might deliver. Instead, she simply asked, What's going on? Didn't you hear me?" I tried again, but found myself unable to repeat the words. Some unseen force, seemed to be preventing me from revealing that we were already married. I tried typing it, writing it down. Any attempt to communicate the truth was thwarted. After several failed attempts, I finally gave up and shrugged apologetically at young Ryuin. "I can't tell you." Heaven knew it wasn't a refusal but a genuine inability. But young Ryuin seemed to misunderstand even further. She bit her lip hard, her eyes welling up with tears. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. How could someone so seemingly vulnerable be associated with the ruthless Lu Ryuin, the Ice Queen? I pushed the thought aside. The girl stepped closer, placing one hand against the wall behind me. The sudden proximity made our breaths mingle. If the older Lu Ryuin had made this move, it would have been a dominant, possessive gesture. But with this young girl, it felt more like a cuddle. I couldn't help but smile. "Don't laugh," young Ryuin scolded, pinching the flesh on my waist with surprising force. I hissed in pain, and she quickly released her grip. Her voice, however, still trembled with anger. "He won't let you tell me? He's not worthy. Gujibwa, I don't agree. Divorce him now." So domineering, I thought, amused. But aloud, I simply asked, "Wait, why do you care so much? Don't you think you're overstepping a bit?" Young Ryuin gritted her teeth and leaned even closer. I could smell the pleasant, woody scent of her perfume. She tilted my chin up, her little bare ears drooping. Her gaze lingered on my lips for a moment. Her stare was so intense that I momentarily lost my voice. "Do I have to do this for you to realize I'm not a little girl?" she murmured. "What do you think I've been doing here all this time? Do you think I'd just let you marry someone else?" What did she mean? I shouldn't have had any connection to Lu Ryuin before our marriage. But she spoke as if she'd known me for a long time. I tugged on one of her bare ears. "Why do you care so much? Don't tell me you like me." The girl's ears turned bright red. She thought I hadn't noticed, but her attempt to play it cool was betrayed by her flustered demeanor. "Yeah, so what? Got a problem with that?" she retorted, her voice stiff, but her nervousness evident. The adult Lu Ryuin would sometimes look at me with a similar intensity, but it always felt like she was looking through me at someone else. And when I noticed, she would always quickly avert her gaze. I hated that look, but I also had no right to hate it. So, I didn't take this young girl's confession seriously. If she really liked me, why was she so cold after we got married? I laughed, my tone teasing. "Yeah, I do. I already have a wife. You're not even old enough to wear high heels, and you're already thinking about being a mistress? How presumptuous." Young Ryuin, however, seemed completely unfazed by my mockery. "Then don't let me see your wife," she declared, her voice firm. "If she treats you well, I'll treat you twice as well. If she treats you badly, I'll break her legs. If she dares to be unfaithful, I'll make her kneel down and apologize to you." I winced. I didn't know where the older Lu Ryuin had gone, but I hoped they wouldn't run into each other. The thought of this little girl confronting her older self was too painful to contemplate. Okay, I hear you," I said, trying to appease her. I'd never met a mistress wannabe so murderous. She seemed pleased by my acquiescence. Young Ryuin snuggled into my arms, her fluffy bare head resting on my shoulder. Her eyes, bright with affection, looked at me adoringly. Then, "Big brother," she whispered, "let's have a secret affair." I gently pushed her away. "Look, I don't care where you picked up your mistress literature and sister-in-law literature, but I'm not into that kind of thing, and I don't want to break the law. Let's keep our distance. Okay?" Her expression fell. She seemed to be debating between arguing that she was already an adult and demanding to know what was wrong with Mistress Literature. But in the end, she settled on a more pressing concern. Why is your temperature so high? Hi? Her question made me realize that I had a headache and felt feverish. I glanced down at my holy boxer briefs. Lu Ruin. Even crows aren't as ominous as you. I caught a cold. Young Ryuan looked at me, puzzled, seemingly unaware of why I was suddenly glaring at her. But she still reached out to feel my forehead, checking my temperature. Then, she ran off to find me some medicine. The little one is much more fun than the big one, I thought to myself. Just then, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and my heart skipped a beat. The caller ID, Ice Queen. It was the real deal. I answered the call. Gujibwa. Lu Ryuan's voice was brisk and businesslike. I left some documents at home. I'll send someone to pick them up. Could you find them for me? They're in the drawer in my study. You know where it is. Of course, I replied, my voice flat. Even my 2-year-old dog was more affectionate. I lowered my gaze, feeling no particular emotion, or rather, I was just numb. Years of accumulated disappointment had taken their toll. The call should have ended there, but Lu Ryuan hesitated. What's wrong? She asked, her voice sounding slightly hoarse. Maybe it was the fever, but I thought I detected a hint of concern in her tone. Usually, even when I was seriously ill, with a team of doctors attending to me, Lu Ryuan rarely bothered to check on me. If she knew there was a younger version of herself trying to steal me away, she probably wouldn't care, I thought with a bitter smile. Nothing, I replied. Just a cold. Her voice sharpened. How did you catch a cold? Did you take any medicine? I told you not to dress so lightly last night. Why didn't you listen? I quickly interrupted her, just as young Ryuan re-entered the room. I hung up the phone just before she could see who I was talking to. The little girl might be young, but she was suspicious. As she handed me the medicine, she asked pointedly, "Who were you talking to?" "My wife," I replied, watching young Ryuan's face crumple in a pout. She seemed to be sulking, but quickly recovered. She snuggled up to me again, her fluffy bare head resting on my shoulder. "Then I'm Big Brother's little lover," she declared. My head was spinning with questions. "Let's compromise," I suggested. "I'll be your concubine." "Dream on," young Ryuan retorted. "Okay, fine," she conceded after a moment. "How about girlfriend?" "Not even a dog," I said firmly. "Fine, a dog it is," Lu Ryuan agreed readily. Speechless, I shook my head. There was no reasoning with her. Young Ryuan stared at my face for a long time. So long, in fact, that I started to wonder if I had something on my face. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "You were smiling just now." I froze, my hand hovering near my face. I didn't know how to react. Had I been smiling? I hadn't even realized it. The girl's gaze was intense and earnest, like a burning fire that made me want to look away. "I remember you used to smile a lot," she said. I gave her a wry smile. Young Ryuan sighed and wiped away my forced cheerfulness. "You don't have to pretend around me," she said. "I know when you're not really happy." She touched the corners of my eyes. "When you're happy, these crinkle up like little crescents. I want to see you smile more." Her words struck a chord within me, a pang of something I couldn't quite place. I suppressed the sudden surge of emotion and asked suspiciously, "Were we close back then? You sound like you know me very well." A flicker of panic crossed young Ryuan's eyes. She seemed about to say something when the doorbell rang. It was probably the secretary coming to pick up the documents. I ushered young Ryuan into the bedroom and told her to stay put. As soon as I stepped out, I saw Lu Ryuan standing at the door, the older one, my legal wife. "Why are you back?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. Lu Ryuan glanced at me indifferently, placed a bag from the pharmacy on the table, and walked over to me. She placed her hand on my forehead. "Your temperature seems okay. Go take your medicine." I walked stiffly towards the kitchen, watching from the corner of my eye as Lu Ryuan headed towards the bedroom. I rushed to stop her. "Ryuan, let me make you some tea." But she stopped, staring at a pair of limited edition pink sneakers carelessly placed outside the bedroom door. She seemed lost in thought. They were young Ryuan's. I had told her to leave them outside so she wouldn't dirty the bedroom floor. After a long moment, Lu Ryuan kicked open the bedroom door, her eyes blazing with fury. The doorknob slammed against the wall and rebounded with a loud bang. She was clearly livid. I knew this situation was bizarre, and Lu Ryuan probably wouldn't believe me. But things had already escalated to this point. If she was going to yell at someone, it might as well be at young Ryuan, not me. I stood outside the bedroom door, feigning innocence. But Lu Ruyuan searched the entire bedroom and couldn't find the girl. I had a bad feeling. I started helping her search, checking under the bed, behind the curtains, inside the closet, every possible hiding spot. But the girl was nowhere to be found. Just moments ago, she had been here worried about me, telling me to smile more. Lu Ruyuan looked at me, her expression more frantic than my own. She couldn't help but laugh, a humorless sound. Hiding someone in the house? You're not even trying to be discreet, are you? The Ice Queen approached me, her expression cold and intimidating. She was truly angry, and the fact that the girl was gone seemed to bother her even more than it bothered me. Who is she to you? She demanded, her voice tight with barely suppressed rage. A flicker of sadness, something I couldn't understand, flashed in her eyes. Gujibwa, I'm not dead yet. Don't you think you're going too far? No, it's not like that. I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come out. It was happening again. Any attempt to reveal the other Ryuan's existence was blocked. I laughed, a bitter, frustrated sound. Fine, play your games. I get it. I understand. I'm the backup plan, the disposable option, the split end, the soap scum swirling down the drain, the crushed cracker in the supermarket aisle, the discarded sunflower, the quiet kid no one notices. I'm the one being abandoned in this three-person relationship. Seeing my silence, Lu Ruyuan scoffed and released her grip. Fine, do what you want. Just don't bring her in front of me. She stepped back, turning her head away and rubbing her temples wearily. I didn't understand. She was clearly angry. Regardless of who the girl was, regardless of whether there were any real feelings between us, even if our marriage was just a facade, my apparent infidelity was a slap in the face to Lu Ruyuan, the Ice Queen. Even if she didn't love me, she shouldn't be so indifferent. Unless she loathed me so much that she could tolerate even this. My pent-up emotions finally erupted. Tears streamed down my face as I choked out, Lu Ruyuan, if you hate me so much, why did you marry me in the first place? I saved you, she interrupted, her voice low. I don't want you to hate me, but I hate you. I cut her off. Hate you? In a way, marrying me was saving my life. My mother had joined the Zhao family's company when she was young, expecting a life of comfort and security. But during a company dinner, she caught the eye of the head of the family, Zhao Ritian. He seduced her with sweet words and empty promises. When she became pregnant, the company found an excuse to fire her. She tried to contact Zhao Ritian, but he cut off all communication. She then discovered that he had been married for years. When I was born, my mother may have loved me, but for her, I was just a bargaining chip, a way to get Zhao Ritian's attention. But she soon realized that his heart was made of ice. He began to resent me, blaming me for ruining his life, for his wife leaving him, for getting fired from his job. He hated me for not being a girl who could have been taken in by the Zhao family. He would curse me, then regret it, then hold me and cry, apologizing while hitting me. I always pitied him. So, when the Zhao family finally contacted us, it was only to arrange a marriage for me, a business merger to solidify their partnership. Even though I was already disillusioned with my mother, seeing her readily agree to the proposal, just for a chance to see Zhao Ritian again, filled me with a burning hatred. My fiancé, Feng Ping, was notoriously cruel and violent. They said he had killed people. I was so desperate that I planned to kill Zhao Ritian and then myself. That's when Lu Ruyuan appeared. Everyone treated her with respect. And she said to me, "You can marry me." She paused, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, then rephrased her offer. "Can I marry you?" I had no other choice. Her eyes, they looked familiar. I stared into her gentle gaze, and before I knew it, I had agreed. "I hate you," I said now, each word heavy with emotion. Lu Ruyuan simply hummed in acknowledgement and went to her study to retrieve her documents. She didn't even look at me as she left. But her expression, it looked so lonely. I didn't understand, and I didn't want to understand. I just wanted to be free of her. I'll find 5 girls, I thought angrily. 1 for each weekday and 2 for the weekend. I'll have them roll dice to decide who gets which day. And if my friend likes one of them, I'll give her to him. Lu Ruyuan didn't come home. She sent me a message, telling me to erase all traces of the other person. I typed out a reply, "Then don't ever come back." Then she added that she might have been a bit harsh earlier, that it wasn't directed at me, and that she hoped she hadn't scared me. I deleted my angry reply. She was always like this, cold, distant, aloof. Yet, she would occasionally show a flicker of warmth, just enough to keep me on the hook. Like I was a dog. I scoffed. about to dismiss everything as a bad dream, when the very person who had caused our argument climbed in through the window. Halfway through her climb, we locked eyes. We were on the 3rd floor of a villa. I rushed over and pulled her inside. "Are you crazy?" I demanded. Young Ruin hooked her arm around mine and said sweetly, "I heard someone at the door. I didn't want to interrupt. And besides, you said the medicine was bitter, so I bought you some candy." She pressed something into my hand. It was my favorite orange-flavored hard candy, still warm from being held in her hand. Looking at her, I suddenly blurted out, "My wife is terrible to me." Young Ruyen snuggled closer. "I'll be good to you," she murmured. "I promise." "You're lying," I thought. "You're not good to me at all." Young Ruyen took the opportunity to sow discord. "So don't wear this anymore. It's ugly." She pulled the ring off my finger and pocketed it before I could protest. "I told you you should have married me," she said triumphantly. "One of you likes to cheat, and the other likes to be cheated on. What am I supposed to do?" I muttered. "Then I'll leave." "No, you won't." I pulled my hand away, exasperated. Young Ruin, mistaking my frustration for anger, tried to appease me. As I reached out, my hand brushed against her stomach. I heard her hiss in pain. Alarmed, I turned to check for injuries, but young Ruin, unlike her usual boldness, suddenly became shy, trying to divert my attention. My suspicion deepened. Ignoring her protests, I grabbed her hand and lifted her shirt. Young Ruin's waist was slender, her stomach smooth and flat, with a faint outline of abs visible beneath the skin. It should have been a sight to admire, but several angry scars marred the otherwise perfect picture. Several inch-wide scars crisscrossed her abdomen, some deep, some shallow, judging by the raised tissue. Each one spoke of a dangerous encounter. My hand froze, then began to tremble. I recognized the shape of each scar. I had bandaged them, applied medicine, watched as the flesh slowly healed. I had even traced them with a hidden tenderness. I laughed, a hollow, desolate sound. "Lilia," I whispered, "is this some kind of joke?" I had suspected it before. The adult Lu Ryuan had even more scars, older scars. I had always noticed a strange familiarity in Lu Ryuan, a resemblance to Lilia, whose face I could barely remember. But whenever I tried to probe, she would deflect my questions with effortless ease. Eventually, I convinced myself I was imagining things. If it really was her, why would she pretend not to know me? Lilia was a wounded girl I had found in an alleyway on my way home from school. She had collapsed in a dark corner, the stench of garbage masking the smell of blood. Passers-by had assumed she was just a drunk teenager and had simply kicked her aside. Only I had heard her cries. I was only 13 at the time. She wasn't much older, maybe 17 or 18. I managed to help her up, only to discover that she was covered in blood. She opened her eyes a crack, saw me, and gave a weak smile. "Sorry," she whispered. "I got blood on you. I ruined your clothes." No one had ever apologized to me before. After losing her job, my mother had fallen into a deep depression. We lived in my grandmother's old apartment, a cramped, noisy space filled with the sounds of shouting, cursing, and the cries of abused women. When I cried, my mother would say, "I'm sorry," but I knew it wasn't an apology. It was an expression of her resentment towards me. That was the first time I realized that someone could apologize for something so small. I was used to getting injured myself, so even though I was young, I was already quite skilled at bandaging wounds. Even so, I had never seen injuries as severe as little Yuz. I brought her home. It was a good thing my mother was rarely there, or I wouldn't have known what to do. He was rambling about a kidnapping, saying things like, "It's fine, they wouldn't dare kill me," and telling me to just focus on bandaging his wounds. I urged him to go to the hospital, but he refused. "If a bunch of people know how badly I'm hurt, they'll definitely check all the nearby hospitals and clinics," he insisted. "Okay, kiddo," I said, dabbing some antiseptic near his wound. "Who are you calling kiddo?" he retorted, his voice childish. "You're not that much older than me." He stopped abruptly, then gave me a weak smile and passed out from the pain. I dabbed at my nose with the gauze, feeling a strange pang of guilt. Despite my careful bandaging, his wounds became infected, and he spiked a fever several times. I ran back and forth to the clinic, asking for advice. Thankfully, he was young and recovered quickly. During that time, he practically lived in my room. I was constantly on edge, terrified that my mother would find out. For the first time, I was grateful for her indifference. When he was finally able to move around freely, he refused to let me change his bandages. "Men and women shouldn't be so intimate," he insisted. "And you're still so young." I can do it myself. When I saw the disastrous results of his handiwork, I simply commented, "Wow, that's impressively ugly." He looked at me, a gentle, amused glint in his eyes. Back then, I saw him as an older sister figure. He wanted me to call him Sister Ya, but I refused, insisting on calling him Little Ya. He swatted the back of my head playfully. "Such disrespect," he scolded, but he was smiling. I always knew he didn't belong here. Once his wounds healed, he would leave, and I might never see him again. So I didn't ask his name. Little Ya somehow had money. He rented an apartment downstairs for about 6 months. During that time, whether to disguise himself or for some other reason, he cut his hair short and dyed it red. He often had bruises on his face and even got a dragon tattoo on his neck, like the local gangsters. That's why I didn't recognize young Ryuin later. Not only had my memory faded, but the elegant Lu heiress was a far cry from the tattooed street tough I remembered. I asked him how much longer he could stay. Little Ya patted my head. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll take care of those punks first." The punks were the local gangsters who often extorted money from students, beating them if they didn't pay. They had cornered me in an alley twice, but after Little Ya witnessed it, they became terrified of him. Even after he left, they never bothered me again. An hour before he left, we were shopping. He had been tutoring me in almost every subject, and my grades had improved dramatically. He was so pleased with my progress that he took me out to buy me a reward. We passed a department store, and my eyes lit up at the sight of a brown teddy bear onesie in the window. We couldn't afford new clothes, and my pajamas were hand-me-downs from my mother. I had never seen anything so soft and cuddly before. I was practically drooling. Little Ya offered to buy it for me, but I shook my head. "Mom will find out," I whispered. She would ask where I got the money, and if she found out about Little Ya, she would be furious. Suddenly, a black car pulled up beside us. Several men in suits emerged, their movements precise and efficient, their aura completely out of place in this neighborhood. I knew what was happening. I looked at Little Ya. He smiled, his usual gentle smile, and apologized again. "I'm not good at goodbyes," he said, "but thank you so much." Was this apology his way of saying, "I love you"? I wondered. He pressed a bank card into my hand. It had enough money to cover my tuition through high school and even college. He ruffled my hair and gave me a gentle push. "Go buy what you like," he said, "and don't look back, or I won't be able to leave." So, I walked into the store, fighting back the urge to turn around, the urge to cry. I didn't buy the teddy bear onesie. When I came out, the street was still crowded, but he was gone. Snapping back to the present, I looked at young Ryuin, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside me, making it hard to breathe. Why had she married me? And why was she so cold now? Was this some kind of cruel joke? I was already sick, and this emotional roller coaster was making me dizzy. Young Ryuin, seeing my distress, rushed to support me, but I swatted her hands away, my eyes burning with tears. Her pleading expression overlapped with the image of the red-haired girl from my memory. "What did I do?" she asked, her voice laced with panic. I wouldn't dare play a trick on you. Couldn't blame her. Even though I was consumed by confusion, I knew young Ryuin was innocent of what happened later. She was the same kind Sister Ya who had cared for me. Why else would she still be wearing that teddy bear onesie? Even after all these years, even after changing her hair and getting rid of her tattoos. The documents, they must have been important for Lu Ryuin to come back for them. And she was always meticulous, especially with important documents. I couldn't understand why she would leave something so crucial behind, but I desperately needed answers. I needed to find some shred of evidence in these details. Evidence of what? I wasn't sure. Before I knew it, I was in her study, searching through the drawer she had mentioned on the phone. We kept our lives strictly separate, and I never touched her documents. Lu Ryuin must have known this, which was why she never bothered to hide them from me. I wasn't sure if there were any backups, or what exactly she was looking for. I found the most recent contract and opened it. It was an acquisition agreement for Changxing Group, the Zhao family's lifeline. I had heard rumors about the Zhao family's troubles and had scoffed, thinking it was karma. I never imagined Lu Ryuin was behind it. Even though the Zhao family had fallen from grace in recent years, they were still a formidable opponent. These few sheets of paper represented a complex web of business dealings and power plays. Given the long-standing partnership between the Zhao and Lu families, this move seemed like a betrayal. I didn't believe Lu Ryuin would be so eager to bankrupt the Zhao family. The risks far outweighed the rewards. What was she gaining from this? What was her motive? My hands trembled, Young Ryuan stood in the doorway watching me. Tears streamed down my face as I choked out, "Rune? Is this because of me?" She froze. "Of course," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "My answer to that question will never change." "Then I'll trust you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I trust that your heart remains true, that even as you grow older, you'll stay true to yourself." As I continued to search for more clues, young Ryuan spoke again. "Jibwa." "What?" I asked without looking up. Her voice became distant and muffled. "Don't look back. Don't look at me." I realized what was about to happen. A wave of sadness and confusion washed over me. I kept my head down, tears blurring my vision, soaking the documents on the floor. I didn't look up until the papers were crumpled in my hand. Young Ryuan was gone. Only the breeze, rustling the curtains, brushed against my face. Felt lonely. Lu Ryuan returned late that night. I sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, lost in thought. She glanced at me indifferently, but for some reason, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. "You've learned your lesson," she said, referring to my cold. I remained silent. Just as she was about to enter the bedroom, I finally spoke. "Little Ya." Lu Ryuan stopped. My vision blurred with tears. I wanted to say more, but she interrupted me. "Is that the name of the person you were hiding?" It was happening again. I walked towards her. As I got closer, I noticed that she wasn't as impassive as I thought. Her breath hitched, and her eyelashes trembled. "Did you bankrupt the Zhao family because of me?" I asked. "No," she replied. "Chongqing's management was already corrupt. They would have collapsed eventually." Before she could elaborate, I interrupted her. "Think carefully before you answer. Was it because of me?" Lu Ryuan's silence stretched on. I had never cried in front of her, not even when we parted ways years ago. So, when she cupped my face in her hands and gently wiped away my tears, I wondered why I was crying again. And why did she look so heartbroken? As if she was the one in pain. Her voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "I'm only asking you this once," I said, my voice trembling. "This is my first and last time being brave. If you lie to me, I don't want to see you again, not even in the next life." Time seemed to slow to a crawl. My hope dwindled with each passing second. Just as I was about to give up, she finally nodded, the movement heavy with significance. "Yes," she whispered. "So please don't cry anymore. Your eyes are all swollen." My tears stopped. The weight that had been crushing my heart finally lifted. I had won. But at the same time, a surge of anger, long suppressed, finally broke through. "Then what are you doing?" I demanded, pushing her away. "If you weren't in that car accident, if you didn't lose your memory, why didn't you say anything? Was it fun playing these games?" Lu Ryuan let me vent, silent as ever. When I finally calmed down, I noticed that her face was unusually pale. A wave of panic washed over me. She grabbed my hand and looked at me intently. "Jibwa," she said, her voice strained. "I don't care who that person is. If you like him, it's fine. But could it at least not be now?" Her words filled me with unease. I gripped her hand tighter, demanding an explanation. Lu Ryuan looked away, her brow furrowed. "I regretted marrying you almost immediately," she confessed. "There were other ways. I shouldn't have let my selfishness ruin your expectations of marriage." "I never had any expectations of marriage," I said quietly. She gave a weak smile. "The moment I saw you, the despair in your eyes, your determination to destroy everything, it terrified me. I didn't have any other motive besides getting you out of the Zhao family," she said. "I'm sorry. Then why didn't you just tell me?" I asked, my voice thick with frustration. "We could have had a good life together after that." Lu Ryuan smoothed my hair and sighed. "Jibwa, there is no after. I already made the first mistake by letting my feelings get in the way. I can't keep making the same mistake. The less you like me, the better. That way, when we separate, it won't be so hard on you. I shouldn't have entered your life in the first place." A cold dread gripped my heart. A premonition, dark and heavy, made it hard to breathe. All the strange behavior, all the subtle clues, suddenly clicked into place. The sadness in her eyes, her urgency in bringing down the Zhao family, her unnatural pallor, her uncharacteristic forgetfulness. "Who said anything about separating?" I demanded, my voice rising in panic. Lu Ryuan shook her head. "You'll be better off without me." "I'm not better off," I interrupted, my voice choked with tears. "Ryuan, I'm not better off at all. Why can't you talk to me? Please. Her stoic expression finally cracked. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't want to hear that. I cried, pulling her close and burying her head in my neck. It was the first time we had been so intimate since our wedding. Lu Ruyuan stiffened, and I felt a warm wetness against my skin. It was scalding, like a brand searing my heart. I took a deep breath and asked softly, "Are you sick?" She closed her eyes, her voice muffled against my skin. "Yes, I'm sick. Gallbladder cancer." My heart stopped. The world went white, and my ears rang. Gallbladder cancer. A death sentence. Even with early detection, the survival rate was only 26%. Seeing my reaction, she looked remorseful. "I knew I shouldn't have told you," she murmured. If the prognosis isn't good after I'm gone, then I'll find 5 girls to dance on your grave." I interrupted, my voice trembling. "I'm not kidding, Ruyuan. I'll be angry if you leave. So you better get treatment. Okay?" Lu Ruyuan nodded earnestly. Cancer. How could it be cancer? Despite my efforts to stay calm, my palms were sweating. I couldn't stop shaking. She looked so tired. Was it because she was in pain? I gently caressed her cheek. She nuzzled into my hand, her long, dark eyelashes brushing against my skin. She looked as fragile as a doll. Why hadn't I suspected anything? My heart ached with a dull, persistent throb. I was so stupid. All this time, while I was resenting her, she had been saying goodbye. But now, at least she had finally stopped hiding. No matter the outcome, I would be there for her. I didn't understand the medical jargon on her scans, or the severity of her condition. She said she had a follow-up appointment the next day and asked if I wanted to go with her. "Of course," I replied, canceling all my other appointments. I spent the rest of the day researching gallbladder cancer, its prognosis, treatment options, survival rates. I was so busy that I barely ate or slept. Lu Ruyuan watched me from the doorway for a long time, then came over and hugged me from behind, trying to get my attention. "So, who was that person?" she asked playfully. "I thought you didn't care," I replied, smiling. She nibbled on my neck as punishment. "And how did you know it was Lilia?" I brushed my lips against hers. A fleeting kiss. "You told me." Lu Ruyuan looked confused, but pleased with the kiss. "Well, if my wife said so, it must be true," she murmured. She must have slipped up somewhere. I tried to hide my anxiety about the next day, but I couldn't sleep. When I woke up, she was gone. My first reaction was disappointment. "Ruyuan," I called out, sitting up abruptly. She was sitting on the nearby sofa, looking at something on the table. Hearing me stir, she picked up the object and walked over to me. She held out her hand. I looked at her, puzzled, but opened my palm. She placed the object in my hand. It was the wedding ring young Ruyuan had taken. When had she put it back? I thought of the young woman in the teddy bear onesie, and my heart ached. Lu Ruyuan waved her hand in front of my face. I looked at her and she smiled gently. "Why don't you ever wear this?" she asked softly. "Who are you married to?" The words from our wedding vows echoed in my ears. "In sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, until death do us part." In sickness and in health. We had made that promise. Why did she think I would abandon her? How many people actually honored those vows? Marriage was a strange thing. For some, it was a lifelong prison, a tomb that swallowed their dreams and aspirations. For others, it was fragile, easily shattered by illness or poverty. What had we been thinking when we said those words? Had we been earnest, indifferent, or simply amused? Why did promises of forever so often turn into empty jokes? I looked at Lu Ruyuan, a sudden realization dawning on me. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I knew my eyes must be crinkling at the corners, my face bright with a genuine smile. "Say that again," I said. Confused, Lu Ruyuan repeated her question. "Who are you married to?" Why were there tears in my eyes as I smiled? I slipped the ring back on my finger, where it fit perfectly. "Lu Ruyuan," I said, my voice filled with a quiet certainty. Lu Ruyuan Epilogue. This might sound strange, but my story didn't end in the 7th century. This is my second life. When I opened my eyes, it was the moment I parted ways with young Jibwa. I was in the car, watching the department store with the teddy bear onesie recede into the distance. I desperately wanted to go back, to say a proper goodbye, but my bodyguards held me back. We never got to say goodbye properly. Why was I being forced to relive this moment? I numbly went through the motions of my previous life, even more afraid to see him, only daring to pay his tuition anonymously and ensuring his safety from afar. I wanted him to have a good life. Then I calmly and deliberately went to my death. The memories of my past life were still vivid. I remembered how sick I was, the tumors spreading, my body failing. But I still wanted to go home, to see him one last time. My time with my beloved was running out. Love fades. And besides, Jibwa didn't love me. That's what I wanted. One day, I came home to find Jibwa wearing those revealing briefs. I knew what it meant, but I couldn't respond. I couldn't even tell him how good he looked, how he had always looked good in my eyes. After that, things started to change, spiraling out of my control. I hadn't done anything differently. Why was everything suddenly changing? Jibwa, usually so passive, became assertive. I admit, his tears and accusations unnerved me. Hadn't I done everything to ensure he wouldn't be hurt after I was gone? But he said he wasn't happy. So I told him the truth. And he hugged me. His embrace felt so safe, so comforting. This was what it felt like to be cared for. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Perhaps this was the meaning of rebirth. I didn't know who had changed things, but I was grateful. Jibwa made me promise to get treatment and to tell him everything. Having faced death once, I readily agreed. Everything was so perfect now. Unbelievably so. What if the outcome could be different this time? I woke up countless times after that. I chose not to hide anymore. After another surgery, the doctors said it was a success. I was transferred to a regular ward with Jibwa by my side. I pulled him onto the bed, wrapped my arms around his waist, and drifted off to sleep. I dreamt of my past life. The same hospital, but this time I was on the brink of death. The leaves outside were falling, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I received a call from Jibwa. My anticipation and joy turned to ashes when he asked for a divorce. The air conditioning must have been malfunctioning because I was shivering. Okay, I heard myself say, my voice cold and distant, a voice I hated. He said he was disappointed, that years of accumulated hurt had numbed him to even hatred. I sighed. I'm sorry, I whispered. But my darling, I love you very much. I wanted to ask him if he remembered Lilia, but the words wouldn't come. I was afraid of the answer, whether it was yes or no. After a long hesitation, I finally said his name. Jibwa, what is it? Don't look back. Don't look at me.